Sometimes you encounter a world so vivid and detailed, so live with full processes and interactions, but there's just one issue. It doesn't exist. You've never been to it. You've never seen it, touched it, yet you can still place yourself within it. They immerse us and feel so real that we create attachments and memories around them. These fictional worlds are key to every good sci-fi and fantasy story. In the story Dune, on the desert planet of Arrakis, people fight for their existence and control over resources and power. In The Lord of the Rings, a band of hobbits, dwarves, and man and elves seek to save their world from destruction and undertake a journey to destroy the one true ring. And in Spirited Away, Chihiro gets stuck in a bathhouse for spirits and seeks to save her parents who've been turned into pigs and so that she can return home. Each of these fictional worlds and stories host a variety of unique settings, characters, and story elements which help immerse a reader in a new world. So how do you create a world that doesn't exist? Fictional worlds have existed for as long as humans have told stories. They serve as playgrounds for characters and creatures to roam in, and for ideas and themes to be shared with, in a highly engaging manner. There are many different ways to build a world, and no one true right way really exists. To build our world, we have to talk about soft and hard world building. Now, what does this mean? Just as the descriptions imply, hard and soft world building looks at the different methods of expressing your world's many intricate workings, either through explicit or implicit means. This lens is what we use to look at many aspects of world building. On the first side of the spectrum is hard world building. Hard world building often contains detail and explanation. Oftentimes the audience is informed on what is happening. What galactic organization is in power? How do political entities interact? Where does one get grain? What specific interactions are occurring that the audience may not be familiar with? Information is explicitly told. This is especially powerful at helping immerse viewers into the world, helping to immediately visualize and imagine creatures, interactions, and many more which typically would be strange and unfamiliar otherwise. Literature such as Dune or movies such as Star Wars contain great examples of this, detailing intricate and galactic interactions and describing factions and characters. On the complete opposite side of this spectrum is soft world building. As you probably could have guessed, soft world building leaves a lot for the viewer's imagination. This is definitely harder to accomplish, as if done poorly, you can leave the viewer in a state of confusion. Soft world building purposely leaves out certain information, rather leaving it to the viewer to further investigate and decipher the world. Rules are hinted at, aesthetics can be odd and unexplained, and the meaning of interactions are often left up to interpretation. A great example of this would be Hayao Miyazaki's Spirited Away. In the story, we follow a young girl who loses her parents to a mystical spirit bathhouse. We never truly learn how the business works, but enough puzzle pieces are laid out for the audience to understand the deeper meanings and messages. Chihiro goes through a journey where she's forced to grow up, and when combined with the unique and mysterious aesthetics, help catch profound meaning and creative freedom all at once. Soft world building also tends to be more powerful for character-driven stories, helping us experience the world through its implied existence rather than its direct summary, as one would do within hard world building. So in summary, world building is a spectrum, from detailed and intricate descriptions to whimsical and implied meaning. When deciding how to create your world, keep this in mind as you decide which technique you want to best illustrate your creativity. Lastly, just as this is a spectrum, stories and worlds can sit within this same spectrum. Within Star Wars exists a detailed political system with intricate ships and armies, but at the same time, Star Wars uses a magical system based on emotion and feeling, helping create an intriguing aspect to the universe. Do not forget to make use of both of these elements in order to fully immerse and populate the world you create. An example of how these concepts are used is within my own work, which is playing throughout this video. This illustration, called Holy Neonic Lands, makes use of numerous soft world building techniques such as illustrations and symbols, and hard world building techniques such as maps and routes. Much of the information apart from the name of the lands and cities is not explicitly told, allowing viewers to infer on the interactions within the world. They begin to attach meaning and relationships between the places in the illustrations, helping to introduce them to this unfamiliar world. I left a lot of the hard world building aspects out as I felt they would be better presented within a narrative media. After understanding the spectrum of world building, the first step to creating a world that doesn't exist is creating key pillars for which that world to exist within. I gained a lot of my information for this from the Template Institute, a great source on world-building information. Think of these pillars as a guidepost that you can find your way back to whenever you start to create and add to your world. These pillars encompass the original intention behind your project, the original ideas, themes, and aesthetics you wanted to convey. We can create 3 general categories based off of what I mentioned before, and those are inspirations, themes, and tenets. For my own work, I decided maps and illustrations would be one of my pillars. I often consistently create maps and illustrations to express my world, and having consistency within this has allowed me to improve and continuously add to my world in an iterative process. Another pillar of mine is keeping my work close to some of my favorite inspirations, such as Studio Ghibli. Inspiration encompasses all the media, events, and stories, and more that you'd like to include within your world. For myself, that includes creators such as Hayao Miyazaki, Frank Herbert, and many more. For your inspiration, you can use popular media or many other sources, such as observing the natural world or different cultural myths and stories, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh. It is oftentimes that our own experiences in the world around us best inform the worlds we want to create. After looking through inspirations, we want to create themes which often help weave your story together. Taking note of key themes helps drive the message and story of the world. What do you want your audience to think about after consuming the story? Within Dune, colonialism, political intrigue, and the warnings of religious zealotry sit front and center throughout the story. This helps create parallels within our own world and helps allow viewers to personally identify with the story being told. Besides the general aesthetics of your world, the message or emotions behind your story and world will be felt the most. Lastly, are tenets, which tend to be the most fun part of world building, as well as the aspect people think about the most. Tenets refer to the fundamental principles within your world, the political systems, magic systems, countries, people, and more. This includes the aesthetics and systems of control, which are some of the most important aspects of any world. This refers to the actual setting and interactions, the world itself. Within Star Wars, they use a system of magic called the Force, along with depicting a galactic struggle between major political factions. They use laser swords and flying in iconically designed spaceships. These aspects stand at the foundation of Star Wars, and as the story progresses and changes, these tenets do not. Changing foundational tenets can offer benefits if you're seeking to change the setting and many of its fundamental aspects, but remember that changing tenets are often changing fundamental rules of your world. Once you've gathered these key pillars, you have established a basic framework for your world that doesn't exist. After this step is the most fun part, which is actually creating and developing a world that doesn't exist. This includes developing an aesthetic, setting, characters, and systems of control all throughout your world. One of the first things you should decide is the aesthetics behind your world. Now, by this I mean a few things. Firstly, I do mean the visual and emotional way the world presents itself. Is it a medieval world with castles, forests, knights, and witches? Or is it a sci-fi bonanza with spaceships and planets? Though we think of visual, this also means the interactions, processes, and occurrences within the world as well. This ties in with your message or theme, and when coupled together, help create the first two recognizable characteristics of your world. This help make it unique and give it its own niche and framework for it to better follow. Though remember that adhering to certain expectations can be cliché and an undesired effect for some. Follow your own rules and inspiration, but recognize when elements don't make sense, feel out of place, are overused, or just aren't what you want. Next, and a huge part of any world is setting. Just as I mentioned before, hard and soft world building lends you to build your setting in a certain way. You can illustrate clear processes and interactions, allowing viewers to easily understand the ecosystem presented in front of them. Alternatively, you can experience the world as the character works through it. Each is adept for accomplishing certain tasks. Clear illustrations and processes help ground and immerse readers. They can use their little mental versions of themselves and live within the world through a clear rule set. This can also limit the world as you create parameters. Alternatively, immersion is still accomplished with soft world building, but oftentimes viewers attempt to decipher the world in order to satisfy their own curiosity, as parameters are felt less. This can lead to a different type of immersion, one where the emotion and message of the story is more felt, as is the power of the unspoken. Less is said, yet more is felt. Settings and aesthetics are most likely some of the biggest aspects of any world influenced by the author's inspiration. Oftentimes when we refer to this, we refer to the media, stories, or worlds we see within our own life. Though this is not just limited to media we consume, though, as natural and real-world processes provide some of the most vibrant sources of inspiration. Did you know that the lightsabers and fights in Star Wars are based on Japanese samurai? There are millions of points of inspiration just like this in our real world. Dune uses the Middle East. The Studio Ghibli makes use of many aspects of Japanese and European culture. It may be fair to say that nothing truly original exists, as almost everything takes inspiration from other art or beauty of the real world. After recognizing this, we can move on to characters. Characters serve as the biggest story elements and catalysts for events within our world. They often encapsulate or represent the themes or messages we want to share within our stories. Additionally, characters contain some of the juiciest and most compelling pieces of information throughout a story. Each interaction they go through helps build them and the world around them, further immersing the audience into your world. Well-written characters are celebrated and remembered, championed by many different people, and creating communities and helping to bring your world alive. Keep in mind that just as characters are some of the biggest catalysts for stories and points of immersion, without proper care, they can result in confusing, frustrating, or uninteresting stories, which drive the audience away. The same advice that can be given for the characters can be given for many of the other world-building elements present within a story. Creatures, plants, resources, countries, and more can often be viewed in the same role as the characters, helping immerse and pass themes throughout the story. Just as poorly written characters can frustrate the audience, poor consistency throughout these additional elements can hinder the strength of your story tremendously. What do I mean by consistency? Well, once you've established a basic setting with processes or characters, consistency must be established within them. This consistency refers to all the aesthetics, themes, processes, story elements, rules, and more you've created within the story. If you set the story within a magical, war-stricken universe, which had its biggest villain just killed but aimed to bring him back for round 2, ensure that this works within the framework you've created. Maybe a rogue group found a magic item after a perilous journey. Maybe some royal alchemists run some unethical experiments. Don't just make them appear because the story deems it necessary. This is when plot holes can occur, leaving viewers thinking about your poor storytelling and world building rather than engaging in the masterfully intricate and connected world. More often than not, this can be combated by laying out clear rules or a guideline beforehand within the story. Maybe you've hinted that the villain has resurrective powers beforehand, and a group has been attempting to activate them the whole time. Oftentimes, this can be used to your advantage, creating an antagonist and a suspense rather than forcing the issue at the end. Without ensuring continuity, parts of your world and story, which viewers may love the most, may change or feel different unexpectedly, only hurting the immersion within the fictional world. It can be a speed bump which shakes the viewers awake along their peaceful nap within the vehicle of your world. Remember to use your world to your advantage, and change story elements and rules beforehand accordingly. What's important is your story is told, but within a framework that is believable for the reader. Consistency goes hand in hand with the systems of control you've established within your setting. Systems of control exist all throughout our world. As human beings, we rely on our ability to control things in order to safely interact with the world around us or organize the chaos that we experience in our general lives. This is true for your characters as well, as the systems help them interpret the world around them. Culture and language helps communicate ideas and connect people, for example. Political systems help organize people in their actions. Individuals have desires and motivations. Each of these many systems interact with each other, help to create a diverse and intricate world around them. They make up the world while also evolving its surroundings. By ensuring consistency in order to your systems, you create a set of rules and systems that help immerse the readers. Even worlds which contain chaos and confusion still have threads of consistency, a set of rules present throughout the world and story. Some of the best examples of this are referred to earlier within our conversation around soft and hard world building. Spirited Away makes use of soft world building to hint at systems of control, but never explicitly tell the audience how it works. So for some, this confusion can take them out of the story, but for many, Spirited Away is a compelling and immersive universe with a beautiful, fantastical, and whimsical story. The aesthetics, themes, and messages of the story are emphasized in contrast of the lack of control, an effect which creates a beautifully unique world. The final step to building your world is understanding how you want to convey your world. This is different from the pillars, or it can be one of your pillars. Understanding if you want to create a book, comic, movie, show, web series, YouTube series, D&D campaign, or any other equally valid media is one of the biggest steps in creating your world. This affects the delivery of your message and the way that your audience receives your world. Do you want your world to be imagined through a reader's head? Do you want them in awe of your illustrations and story? Do you want a piece of theater for which people can sit at and enjoy for an evening? All of these change the way you deliver your world and ultimately affect the way it is received. The audience which reads books is drastically different than that watches TV. Oftentimes, creating your world can help point to a specific style of media, or the style of media can help you pick and create your world. Understanding this effect is important, and it is an important step in creating and conveying a world that doesn't exist. In summary, there is not a truly right way to build a world that doesn't exist, but there are frameworks and methods which exist to help you do that. Many of the methods and information I have laid out sit at the basis of world building. Though at the foundation of every world that doesn't exist is a person with hundreds of thoughts, ideas, emotions, and more, and ultimately the ideas and imaginations that you put into that will make these worlds feel more alive and real than the one that you live in.